Welcome to Synced on Air. I'm your host, Angelique Robb, and today I have a friend now. We only knew each other over video to start with, but now we've met in person at Synced Live. But I have Todd Blossom here. Really excited to have you on, Todd, because we got to meet for the first time in Atlanta, and we were working on this project of yours that is outstanding, and you're on today to talk about it. So welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm just really glad to connect it with you and the whole design, build, maintain community around landscaping. So thanks for being a part and helping hold it all together for us.
Well, you have this project is beautiful, and everybody's going to get to see it soon in an issue. But what I thought is that you could fill in like some of the background of the property and, give a bit of the behind the scenes, and everybody's going to be so excited to see the photos on this project. But I also love it because it's very practical from a water management point of view, as well as aesthetically amazing. Why don't you start? Yeah, give us a little bit of a history to the project.
This project actually, that you bring it up and ask the question, it actually has deeper roots than most of ours in the way that it actually started. We started a relationship with this property of the people there pre-pandemic. My daughter was at a preschool there, and this was a place where the teacher, this kind of it just hit me now. I was like, all right, if you want to, this actually has a little bit, another layer to it. And so the family had lived there for some time, and they had preschool. It's a Waldorf school, and her kids had now graduated from college, actually, around that same time that my daughter was in preschool there. And most of the life had happened on this property that was a substantial piece of property in Portland proper, like inner Portland, Northeast, and close to an acre. So pretty unique in that regard. And they, let's jump forward. We get through the pandemic. Their kids are getting married and out of the house and helping with various family businesses, and family businesses ready to maybe move on or change hands. And all along, off in the distance on a half acre of the property, has a flower farm as well. They have a community supported agriculture flower farm. So you buy in, you pay $15 a month or whatever, and every Saturday you can go over to this place and pick flowers. So really neat kind of gathering place, bringing the community together. And they get deep into electric cars as well, and thus spurs a issue with charging and power. So these conversations start to develop around the need for some solar access, some power, and that the current the lack of parking is kind of an issue for some of the cars. And the flower business is kind of growing. There's some need for more space for education there, as well as potentially holding an event in the form of a wedding or something like that.
Wow. Okay. So there's so much. So so the parking was for the house, but the flower farm too, or is that a separate area or
a little bit of both? It's kind of on it's not a dead end street, but it's an unfinished road that they're on a corner lot, and there's some off street parking available. But one of the property owner has a bit of a, like I mentioned, kind of a car thing, an electric car thing in particular. And, I won't, there's a lot of layers to it. Eventually the name comes around. What is happening development wise prior to the landscape portion is what's called the Tesla hangar. And that is, there is a building that is going to be built that basically is intended to help house some of the electric cars and the needs thereof, and also expand the space of the flower farm. And this particular location is planted kind of right in between where the residential house is and the flower farm, and it's going to kind of wed the two and at the same time kind of divide the two.
Yeah.
As far as public and private. There's that.
Yeah. Gosh, a lot of issues for this site. I mean, like weddings and flower farm and Yeah,
lot of
just
opportunity to create space on a lot of different levels and different needs. So early conversations happened about the needs of the property, some of the drainage issues, where, current buildings or structures might be that are going to go away and new ones come in. And at the same time, we're also going to kind of move around to the front of their living space and the private house and just kind of tie in all the landscaping and treating
mm,
that new piece of the property, not new piece of the property, but this kind of new look to it anyway, with this building in the middle, as their private little oasis, um,
yeah.
to be able to return to as they get into their retirement years and maybe not live here year round, but have a place to come and for their kids to be, and also still be doing this flower farm thing on the other side of it as well.
Cool. I didn't know that the flower farm was like a monthly fee or weekly, or what did you say? And that you just come and pick your own. I guess I didn't really know how they're set up. Yeah. So, yeah. So they just plant it up. So they're taking care of the planting, and people
Yep.
can just walk through and cut a certain
Walk through
amount
and
each.
tell you get a mason jar, like a quart mason jar.
Okay.
And also, like I said, it's kind of an event space opportunity and education opportunity. Well, so there's workshops there now on flower arranging and all different levels thereof, and then you can get into all the different flower type arts as well, as far as pressing,
Yeah.
different seed papers, all the different things you can do with flowers.
Collect
And
seed
either
and
can
yeah,
learn
sell
about
seed
how to
packets.
do that, and they get to learn and like go out and get their hands on it at the same time.
I want to go. Yeah.
Yes, so, and uniquely enough, it is called Sun Blossom Farm.
Okay. Oh. So, and you related? No.
Nope, nope. But
Nope.
we have definitely bonded over the years, and yeah, special people, special opportunity, and
Yeah.
that brings out the best in all of us, hopefully. So
Yes. Totally agree. What I mean, this because it's such a complicated project, you must have been working on it in the design phase for quite a while.
I think it was 9 to 12 months in design phase. Yes,
Mm.
yeah, from early conversations on a conceptual level. And we could talk about things conceptually, and we didn't touch all the property. Like, we didn't get deep into the flower farm. We were associated with the area immediately surrounding the building, but as flowers, like the greenhouse, and like, we didn't. There was no need for us to get involved there, so we kind of went the other direction
Yeah.
into their private space, and were able to help facilitate conversations and have conversations while the building construction conversations were happening, and that was being developed, and which in turn kind of guide what happens with the landscape to a certain degree. We kind of
And
started
do
to
you
work
mean
from
the
the front to
hangar
kind of
is
the
what
hangar.
was
Yeah,
the part? Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
So that was built during design phase or just right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, during design phase, and as far as like landscape design and on new construction projects, it's kind of the trajectory is to have, larger, broader vision conversations earlier on, and not get too deep until you're at the end of most of the permit, all the final permitting and everything has been the plans have been approved before landscape starts to go full throttle forward,
Yeah.
so that you're not too, don't take a risk of not aligning when it is most important at the beginning.
Yeah, ideally. I mean, that's how it should work. Doesn't always work that way, but
Yeah,
it's how it
true enough.
should.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell us the next step. Tell us
Well, the
how
next
it went.
steps were, we had goals of the project. Privacy was a big concern, that they really wanted to be able to, feel secluded enough that they were able to come and go as they please, whether people around them knew it or not. And they also kind of had an aspiration of Japanese sort of aesthetic to it, which
Mm.
was a little bit of a stretch for us while we've kind of dipped our toe into that. And I have some history with that early on in my early business days with Blossom. It wasn't something that we were, super familiar with, but it needed to be spoken of in the context of some other functional issues that we needed. One of the primary ones was the management of the water and, more or less all of it associated with the new building and some that was already disconnected from the house. In Portland, you're not really, if you've been acknowledged or usually, verified as disconnecting your downspouts, and that could be through an incentivized program or just by choice. It's oftentimes hard to plug back in. I don't remember if that was
Oh,
exactly the case here, but usually there's really no reason to. And so we're always looking for options, if it's whether it's out of the system or not, to kind of integrate it into the landscape.
great, great. So yeah, so you wanted to keep the water on site,
Uh-huh.
no matter what. And
Yeah.
so how did, yeah, I think, I know
How
some of
did
the
that
bits of the
evolve?
story.
Well,
So you,
as much as I can speak to it on a broader level, right? But
mhm,
while I was involved in the design work throughout the process, I was not the actual designer. And I think you've
mm,
spoken with Dorsey, our senior designer here, and she led that process. But I will say that there was an early picture of a Japanese moon gate, more or less a wall or a door with a circular window in it. And that caught the attention of the owner and designer, and it kind of became this. I don't want to say it was like the center. It was always going to be like, oh, that's going to kind of anchor the whole project. But
mhm,
in a way, that's what it evolved to,
hmm.
and the placement and kind of integrating it in a way that both allowed it to function, provide beautiful views through the porthole in it, or at it from a distance. It was a great opportunity to just kind of pull everything together. And so it ended up conveying water from the new roof and down a rain chain and into a whole little integrated system that involved a little dry creek bed, a water feature, and basically ending in a little series of dry wells and just kind of planting the water that made it there back into the ground.
Yeah, in a beautiful way. I mean, a lot of people want that kind of feature, even though they don't,
Uh-huh.
maybe need it. And, you've used it. But what I guess one of the things that I thought was fascinating is, obviously you were in the construction phase, or were you, remind me, were you in this construction phase of just the hangar, or there was like a flooding event during construction, wasn't there?
Yeah, we did not have the best timing with, but we do work around here year round. It
Mhm.
is until relatively recently, it was usually a non-issue. I mean, maybe we would be off a week. We'd have a snow event and an inch of snow, including the landscapers. But yeah, that was a year. Yeah, it's 2025. So that project was I think the earliest pictures are we were putting that in the ground the end of 2023, and that was a pretty brutal winter here in Portland, and we had a of floods, enough rain in a 24-hour period of time to really push the limits of just a property in general. And this one was under construction. We were working simultaneously with finishing building construction. Well, not us personally, but the building construction was going on. And we got the opportunity to kind of see what happens in a major event. And fortunately, no structures in particular, nothing was damaged. There was no irreversible um, you know, things that happened along the way, but
That's just
we
not
were
something
able
that,
to,
yeah, it's not something that you want to happen when you're, yeah, doing
no.
groundworks and
And that said, you anytime doing that work, obviously you want to have proper measures in place, erosion control, your sediment bags and bio bags and things like that to help slow it down, direct it. And like I said, it's an opportunity. If you can actually see it when it's happening,
and
you can usually make some pretty good adjustments to design that in the end, should another event happen like that, and in most cases they will at some point, then you're in a pretty good position.
well, that's what I mean. it's a shame that that happened, but it's also fortunate. It's both, isn't
Yes.
it? So,
Yeah.
and I think you did do some tweaking, did you, was it
I
pretty
did.
much
Yeah,
as
actually,
you
I mean,
needed?
it was this property had its challenges with the grading.
Mm,
We were actually having a conversation about this here this morning. We have a particular situation where sometimes you don't really have a good exit strategy off property with the water,
mm,
especially if the option is, usually the last resort is to plug it back into the sewer system. And as I mentioned, that's not always an option, at least around
yeah.
here. And so you dry wells, or there's a particular one we use, this little flow well system. It's kind of a little mini dry well, engineered dry well, off the shelf system that you
Hmm.
can sister multiple ones together. So in the end, for us, the solution was, okay, we need more capacity. And instead of just a single cell or a two cell operation, we actually had to have a third cell and make it just add that much more capacity to it.
But that's perfect to know at that time.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
would
It
be
was
much
nice to not have
more
to.
disturbance to the site if you had to go
Exactly.
back and
You're right.
excavate. So I
Yeah.
think it was a good thing. You know, but you never want to wish yeah, heavy rains during halfway through construction, but yeah,
Yeah, we had ice that year
fantastic.
as well. We actually lost some plants. I mean, I don't recommend it. We've kind of, and I mean, these are just some of the extremes that we are experiencing weather-wise. Like we are changing kind of our standards and policy, not policies to some extent. We're not planting. We have since then basically we stopped winter planting.
Okay.
And most nurseries, don't cover warranties. These are things that have been kind of standard for years.
And it's
But
changing.
a few of the events specifically related to the landscape industry or the nursery business or something like that, some of these extremes are devastating, and everybody's trying to find their own ways to kind of mitigate that. So one of ours is basically like we're not putting plants in the ground more or less December through February. We're sizing up our first planting projects now.
Okay.
Mid-March was kind of our target date.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the USDA hardiness zones are even changing, and
Mhm.
but we are having a lot more unusual weather events everywhere. We
Yeah.
had 13 inches of snow in South Louisiana in January. It
Doesn't
it's funny.
sound
I was sending
normal.
photos to people, and they were like, "That looks like Maine." It was powder snow. You couldn't even make
Uh-huh.
snowballs with it. And we're used to like humid weather, and it was bizarre. I
I
kept
hear you.
wondering where I was. So we do need to, yeah, adapt to those changing weather events as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it makes sense to change your policies and how you do things to adapt, because it's no good if you have to replace everybody's plants, and then go under because of it, or the nursery collapse because they gave a warranty that they couldn't afford to give.
Good enough. Yeah.
We all have to stay in business to do really good work. So gosh, what yeah. And so you said 9 to 12 months to plan. So how long was it in the construction phase?
I'd have to
Sorry,
look.
I'm
It was probably at
I'm sorry, I'm
six
putting you on the
months.
spot. Okay.
No, it's okay. There were a lot of different pieces, right? And one of the we had there was there was a fair amount of concrete work, and actually there was a fully designed and what had to be engineered. I believe it's nearly a 7 foot tall concrete wall that is probably at least 12 inches wide as well. And so
Okay.
that played into the moon gate that I was speaking of, as well as that was a single panel that was poured by our same concrete person. We were doing some pretty interesting concrete form work, and he was up to the challenge of hitting a perfect circle in the middle of a giant, 8 foot square piece of concrete.
Was that the first time he'd done something like that?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
all of us.
All of it, yeah.
But we talked about it, and I knew we had chosen the right person to help. And so in the end, yeah, it takes a team, right?
It
There
does.
was a lot of people involved, and point being that the concrete work itself took a while. just to get everything set up on the front end. And then that was also the last piece too, because a better part of the concrete all got finished at the end with the plaster on it. And so, everything, there was a lot of things that happened between there. So it's interesting to line all that up. There's a little bridge that goes over the creek bed that I mentioned. And that was fully custom designed and made. One of our metal fabricators did all the framework for it. And yeah, it was fun to have that kind of freedom and opportunity to do it.
Yeah. And yeah, artistry and stormwater
Mm-hmm.
management all together. So yeah. Well, and we're excited to show it off in this next issue, and we're also going to put a link to this podcast as well whenever it
Oh,
goes in
great.
the issue, so
That's
people
exciting.
can hear a little bit more about it. And you're helping us do things differently with the magazine that way, because we want to work that in so that
Oh, I
they
love
get
it.
to hear about the project from you. Yeah.
Pretty
What
innate.
so what do you think it's the most challenging project that you've had, or do you think it or the most rewarding? What do you think?
Well, it was challenging on a lot of levels. Those projects can get a little stressful sometimes, especially from a business owner standpoint. And there's things that just don't happen, right? I mean, I didn't really. There's just so many little details, but one of them being, and is totally relevant to our project, is had done all the design work. And you can't. There's, like I said, there's a lot of people, a lot of processes. When you think about it the whole way through it, and there's always an opportunity for a misstep, and usually things get caught. But for some reason, the initial grading did not happen the way that everybody who had done all the
Oh
work expected it to be done, right? So when we showed up the first day for construction, the site was 12 inches lower than anybody
oh my
had.
goodness.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Everybody's like looking at each other like, what's going on here? And it took a
This
while.
is
There's little kinks like that always come up, and that wasn't the only one. That was the one that was the most cumbersome to overcome, but at the same time just created challenges that is really what allowed this to unfold on the level that it did, with some of just the dramatic drainage infrastructure that had to happen with it. It was already in there, but that happening made it like really just kind of, it
worse.
changed the dynamic of the site. And in the end, it made it, you had to do more with a little bit less verticality to work with.
But do you think it ultimately worked to your advantage? Do you think the ultimate design was better, or is it just different? Is it hard to say?
In the end, I think it's a little more dramatic than it
Yeah,
than it would have been otherwise.
sounds like a good
So
thing.
the
Yeah.
statements are that much bolder with it. Yeah.
Well, and
And
this
there's a
is
lot more there too, right? It's a fully, like, there's a lot of heavy contingency of native plants, lots of pollinators, nearly no lawn. I mean, they have a dog, so it was practical that there would be some level of green space for that. But it's interesting. There's no sidewalks. Like I said, it's an unfinished kind of street. It's not necessarily an alley, so there's no sidewalks. And so we had the freedom to kind of do what we wanted with creating our own, paver-based sidewalk instead of concrete. Yeah, just fun. Another rain garden in the front there as well. Yeah.
this is the power of a design build company, isn't it? That you've
Mm-hmm.
taken a design, you showed up on site, things had changed, you adapted, you know,
Yes.
I think ultimately all projects need some kind of iteration. You might have seen the extreme version, but hopefully, like you said, you ultimately had a more dramatic outcome. You had a better outcome, because you could feed the construction constraints or missteps or whatever you want to call them back into the
Sure.
design process.
Yeah.
And then the flood comes, and then you look at it again, and
Yeah. Right.
you know it, it's yeah, based on your experience with the you talked about the planting, how you now don't plant in the winter, but
Mm-hmm.
is there a time of year where it's too rainy to do work, or can you work around that, or is it just you have to just have your contingencies, like you said, everything at the ready?
We do draw some lines. It can get pretty wet, especially when you're talking about stormwater management. And so there's a balance, right? As you know, as a business owner, I put that hat on, and we have to be pushing forward with things. But at the same time, you know, actually working in those conditions, especially without proper precaution as far as soil conditioning goes and the potential levels of compaction that can happen during the construction process on a site, you could be doing have the best design in your head, but you've completely changed some of the infiltration that might be happening or expected to be happening on site through some of your, if you haven't been paying attention and laying plywood or doing some ramping in areas, and really trying to actively reduce soil compaction, then you could potentially be doing more harm than good working in those conditions. And so we do draw that line sometimes. Um, but
In rainy
that said,
climates, it's kind of, yeah, sometimes hard, or it happens to you
yeah,
instead of, yeah.
people are like, you guys work in the rain. I was like, we didn't work in the rain. We wouldn't be working very much around here. I mean, granted, climate's changing and all, but it still rains a fair amount. I won't kid you.
Yeah, you can't not work in the rain. Well, I mean, I just think that it's stunning and love that, the photos, when everybody sees the photos, it's a stormwater project, but it's so beautiful. You would never
Thank you.
know. So I think that that's a great lesson for everybody to hear about. And yeah, and the clients, how did they feel at the end? Are they happy with the result? What's
I
the
think they've been
verdict?
really happy. Yeah, yeah, they've actively, been using the space. Everything is filling in nicely. They had to be, they were patient because, like I said, we did experience some die off, right? So it's kind of hard
Yeah.
at the end. The plants are usually what really just kind of, it's like the icing on the cake at the end of a project. And so it was a little bittersweet to kind of finish to a certain extent, and then like know that we were going to have some die off and have to kind of come back in the spring. But again, it was an opportunity to really kind of push it a little bit further. There were some plant choices that we had made early on, and we said, well, maybe that's not the right place for that, or we want a little bit something there. So the spring was again kind of another opportunity to kind of revisit some things that we thought could be a little bit better, or
So
have
that
those
was
conversations like, should we be using this plant at all if it died in this event? Is that we need to be thinking differently about our plant palette, right? And that's so we want to have those conversations at that moment and at least acknowledge that that's part of what's going on.
or even that plant, but a different variety of that plant.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, we did subtle changes like that.
And so, did you say it was like through the winter of 2023? So, in the photos that we have, is that going to be one season of growth only then? Or, yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what you have now, we've taken some recently, and we're hope like it's on the docket it's going to get another photo opportunity this spring.
Okay.
But yeah, it's surprising, and we did a little bit, again, like we mentioned a little bit, construction sites, just with landscape construction, and this was a dual, simultaneous building construction and landscape going on simultaneously. It takes its toll on a site, and we weren't as happy with some of the results we were getting with the topsoil and some of the amendments that we had brought in. So we did a post installation. We actually have an employee who works with vermiculture,
Okay.
worm castings and stuff. So we make
Yeah.
vermicompost tea. And we did a little. We talked to the homeowners over there and wanted to do a little demo and see if we could, what would happen if we gave kind of an early foliar feeding of this cassia. We did a couple subsequent
Mm.
applications as well to see if we could kind of really kick things into high gear. And yeah,
You
it
did
works. It
that
really
last year.
results are yes.
And okay. And so, and yeah, what are the results?
Well, we didn't do it so scientifically that we have like kind of I mean, we do have a before and after of that site, but I don't have different studies to weigh it up against. But
A
from what
control
I've
or,
noticed,
yeah.
it's pretty clear that we definitely have increased growth and vitality across the board. And the targeted plants, we had a specific variety of heuchera that had some fungal susceptibility, like they were susceptible for whatever reason. We actually
Mm.
replaced them, had the same problem again. And we're like, okay, well then there's something else going on here. And we did our vermicompost tea to that area with a little bit more heavy emphasis
Yeah.
on just watching what was going on there. And yeah, eventually, like we were able to keep that species
Oh, wow.
and are not having the fungal issues anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Helping the plant fight it. It could,
yes,
yeah.
indeed.
Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, give them what they need.
That is
Yeah.
great. Oh, yeah. No, there's a lady that has an air. See, I'm in South Louisiana. She has an air conditioned worm farm. I tried to have
Oh wow.
worms here, like I did in Scotland, and unfortunate to say, I cooked them the first summer because and she was like, "No, they have to be air conditioned." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm not sure
Right.
if I can have a wormery that's air
I want
conditioned."
I want to see a story on that.
I know. Good, good. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Oh man. Well, that sounds great. So much learned from this job, and yeah, just happy that you guys are
Yeah.
sharing it with us, and maybe I'll get to see it one day in person.
Yeah, we
Who knows?
still, we still, we are design, build, maintain. So we're in the active phase of maintain. We're still in that establishment period right now. We kind of focus on those first 3 years post installation to make sure everything, ideally is moving along health wise, as we mentioned. And also, we do a lot of drip irrigation and are, pushing towards lower maintenance, drought tolerance installation.
Okay.
So we're trying to decrease water use over time too, and eventually kind of pull it back to a place where it's just minimal throughout the summer.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So you still need, even though you're in a rainy season, still need irrigation post the
yeah,
3 year. Okay.
yes, yeah,
No, that's good
a
to
little
know.
bit. It gets pretty dry come August, September.
Okay.
So
Microclimates everywhere, huh? Yeah,
yes,
I
indeed.
wouldn't. I mean, again, I'm learning Louisiana again, from Scotland, everywhere you move. And I'm sure
Mhm.
Texas is different and Florida, everywhere. So yeah, oh, good to know. Good to know. And think we talked about this before, but refresh my memory. Like I think this job, it sounds like there were so many challenges from a business owner point of view and budgeting for all this. I mean, how hard was it to come up with a plan from the start versus throughout the project? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you're doing some unique things, or new things for you, but is it something that in that 9 to 12 months, it was pretty straightforward to cost up in that planning
No,
phase? No, okay.
no.
I can imagine it was hard.
It was
Yeah.
it was hard, and especially through the weather events as well. And these are we live and learn. And fortunately, I've been at this long enough where I've lived and learned enough where I am still learning, but hopefully not losing as much money at the same time sometimes.
Yeah,
But
no, but that's important. Yeah.
it is it's a reality. And we sat down as a team afterwards. Like we did well in the sense that we were not far off. We have been diligent with
Okay.
our team for years about getting our bid systems together and, projects
And
prior
enough
to this really
contingency.
evaluating you definitely contingency built in, yes. And really being really clear on that's again an advantage of design build is we get exceptionally clear on what our scope is. And anything beyond that is a noted change. And the idea is not to like hit up with a bunch of changes. So we get real thorough on the front end with all the details. And it
Yeah.
does add up, but most people kind of understand that hopefully in the end we carry a pretty high success rate of keeping things within our contingency with very few or little change orders. That's a goal, and I can talk to people honestly about that. That's we're successful at achieving that goal most of the time, which gives people peace of mind in the sense where okay, yes, it might look a little bit heavier on the front end, but it's nice to have the peace of mind, but there's less of a
but it's
risk of something hopefully popping up
well
along
thought
the
out.
way.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think you're right. Like it's not given, I've heard the argument, oh, just give a lump sum price on some things or some projects. And I think that that's to everybody's detriment. I think that really
Yeah.
the more detail, then that you're not losing money. The client knows what they're getting every step
Yes.
of the way. It's not just lay a patio, put in a moon gate. It's like lifting equipment to do this.
Yeah.
It's, foundations and groundworks to remove so many ton of material. It's
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that visibility and that open book approach that you're explaining is only for everybody's good.
It is. I mean, I really think it makes, because it's, especially in the landscape world, I mean, it's almost inevitable that not everything is going to go as planned. I mean,
I don't know. we're
you
we're
you got to have some
outside.
level of flexibility, and I mean that's the contingency is nice. I mean, I prefer not to have to go to a client say anything if I don't have to, and so if we can like mitigate that along the way. But it did make me think. I mean, yes, the pictures are a small length of time that we put in some big plants as part of the project as well. We definitely had a crane day involved where we were bringing craning in like Japanese maples of
Expensive.
substantial caliper and root balls, as well as boulders and stuff like that. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun. But again, it's like you can't do that everywhere. The site has to be able to accommodate that. And again, just another one of those things where you're just breathing deeply and hoping everything goes as planned at that point for sure.
It's a journey, isn't it? I think yeah. And you learn what you forgot on one job and you make sure to include it on the next job or think it through differently. So, well,
Uh-huh.
and I'm sure this will help some of the other business owners that listen to your story as well. And they're looking at the project
I
and
hope so.
going, oh my goodness, how'd they do this or whatever. So yeah, awesome. Well, Todd, I think we've covered quite a lot. Is there anything else you want
Great.
to add to the story before we
No,
say?
there was so much more there that I had almost forgotten about, but you helped me kind of relive there for a moment. I really appreciate it. Um,
Sure, sure.
yeah. No, I'm excited. We're going to get to hear that project is dreamy in so many ways, and we're excited to kind of just watch it grow and people really use the space. Yeah. So
Well, you'll
thank
have to
you
send
for the
us updated
opportunity to talk about
photos
it.
later this year and we'll add them to
Yeah.
the digital form of the
Yeah.
article. We can add more.
Oh, that'd be
So
great. Yeah.
yeah, great, great. Well, do you want to share your contact details for anybody that might want to reach out to you about the project or about,
Yeah.
advice or anything?
My name's Todd Blossom, and I am the owner of Blossom. We're at Blossom PDX. That's www.blossompdx.com. And we'd love to hear from you.
Great. Well, thanks for being on our podcast and always good to catch up with you.
Thank you, Angelique. Really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.